What truly distinguishes Pokémon from other JRPGs is the concept of the starter. Sure, you can bond with any of the guys you catch on your long journey, but on most teams, barring competitive of course, your starter serves as the team anchor in a metaphorical sense, because they're the first one you get in-game. Even in the oldest of games, when you're in a two-dimensional world, your journey is usually so immersive due to the bonds with the Pokémon that are formed. And I say usually because it's all contingent on one key factor. The starter you pick has a good design. Sure, you can love your starter all you want, but to me, there are definitely some weird starter designs that really break the aforementioned immersion of the world for me. Obviously, there's no objective criteria to determine what a good or bad starter Pokémon design is, but in this video I'm going to analyze the art styles, inspirations, and even real-world biology of some starters, and lay out what I'd define as a really bad starter design. And also, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the final stage evolution, because that's the permanent and definitive form of each starter. And it's in the final stage where some become major offenders of the bad design thing I was talking about. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's start off the first part of this by going back to the point I started with, immersion and lore. Now, obviously, there's always been some Pokemon based on artificial things like balls and magnets since the very beginning, and I think that's okay as long as they fit into the world as a sentient animal-like being. I should be able to look at this, and unless it's a super rare and ultra-powerful legendary, be able to say, yeah, that's a living, breathing creature that lives in the wild. Call me a traditionalist, but I think that should be the base threshold of your average Pokemon design. The three starters of any region are, in theory, living creatures that are part of the region's ecosystem, just like any other Pokemon there. And actually, since they're starters, I'd go as far to say that the in-universe reason that they're designated as such is because of their role in teaching young trainers the base fundamentals of elements and types. And the three starters are supposed to be the white bread of fire, water, and grass, if you get what I'm saying. And if the starters are supposed to be the region's purest representations of those three main elements, why wouldn't they be very straightforward creatures that represent those elements well? What I'm about to say makes me sound like an old man, but here we go. The older starters definitely captured this spirit way better. To me, Venusaur definitely looks like he belongs in the jungle as a gentle giant herbivore, and Charizard could definitely be a fire-breathing dragon in a mountainous cave. To me, this really sells the immersion aspect. I like heavily themed, more humanoid Pokemon like Lucario, Gardevoir, Hawlucha, Pangoro plenty, and I think thoughtfully designed creatures are what makes Pokemon so good. But to me, these designs should be reserved for extremely rare Pokemon that are encountered later in the game and not the creatures that are handed to you at the outset of your journey. Let me elaborate on this by getting into my next main point. Pokemon starters should help make the Pokemon world immersive by feeling like believable animals rather than individual characters. 2. Newer starters are the biggest offenders of this because they're overly designed, so they each feel like individually personality-driven characters rather than a whole biological species. At this point, you're probably thinking, chill the f*** out. This is a fantasy monster collecting series meant for children, so why am I getting all mad about some starters having qualities like kung fu skills, armor, or even military-grade weaponry built into their bodies? And honestly, I don't inherently have an issue with starters that have these qualities at all. In fact, some of these are great. I have fond memories of Infernape, my very first Pokemon from Pokemon Pearl. But what makes Infernape better than the starters that followed him is that he's still primarily a monkey, who happens to know martial arts skills. He feels like they put the animal design first, and added in some subtle nods to Chinese mythology. I can imagine a pack of wild Infernapes. So given this clarification, let's focus on the starters that followed generations 4 or 5, where I think the big shift occurred and starters got a little weird. I remember when I saw the final evolutions for the Kalos starters, and I was like, well, these definitely aren't starters. These are characters. See, the problem here is that Game Freak decided to model each one after generic RPG character classes. You have Delphox the Mage, Greninja the Rogue, and Chestnut the Warrior. Lola took this further and made Incineroar a wrestler, Decidueye an archer, and Primarina a opera singer, I think. I don't even know. You see what I'm getting at here? As I stated before, I don't inherently have an issue with humanoid qualities in Pokemon, but it doesn't help the issue of the Generation 6 and 7 starters, because they don't feel like the creatures that are descended from the basic elementals that you get at the beginning of the journey. The transformation of Charmander to Charizard feels way more fluid to me than the transformation of Litten to Incineroar ever will be. I'm fine with Pokemon being designed to reflect a specific character type, but when it's a starter, Pokemon literally everyone gets at the beginning of the game, it's a problem when our two Incineroars feel like they have the exact same personality because they have the same job, literally. Why would every plain old Fire Cat evolve into a highly skilled wrestler? Why would every single Fennekin in the world, of which there are a lot of, pick up the exact same stick and use it for literal magic? This is also my beef with Rillaboom. Are you actually telling me this giant taiko drum is something every Rillaboom carries around all the time? And when he faints, it goes away with him. Does that mean it's part of his body? I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. I would actually like Rillaboom as a starter if they chilled out with the drum aspect. I don't want to sound like an old man shitting on the idea of fun, creative, and culturally inspired designs. I even think some of the Pokemon I just roasted have great character designs. I mean, just look at Greninja and Incineroar's popularities in Smash. So at this point you're probably asking, if it's okay for Pokemon in general to be heavily themed, why must the starters remain simplistic? Well, let me explain it this way. Imagine you're a little kid in the late 90s and you just picked up a copy of Pokemon Red and Blue. With basic graphics, you need to rely a lot on your imagination to give personalities to the Pokemon you've collected and raised. To distinguish your Charizard from your friends, you need to assign it its own personality. Charizard is not one character. Charizard is a species. So therefore, each individual Charizard should have a design that easily allows the player to project a unique personality onto it. When I look at my Venusaur, mine could be a beast in the jungle, but yours could just be chilling in someone's garden and eating flowers and shit. Not all Venusaurs have the exact same personality type. Honestly, this is something I don't see the new starters doing very well. Like, if we both have a Cinderace, it's hard to project individual personalities on them due to its design. Every time I look at a Cinderace, I think, yeah, this guy plays soccer. And not much else. Same with Inteleon. Like, could you imagine a herd of wild animals who are all good at soccer, or who all act like spies? It's hard to give new starters distinct personality, especially when they're given human qualities that make them all look like one specific gimmicky character, rather than a believable species of animal, with each member having its own persona. The beauty of starters, and their fundamental role in the Pokemon world, is to discover the uniqueness of your generic partner as you go along, and not having it spoon-fed to you through gimmicky character tropes. After all, isn't imagination what makes this franchise so special?